Picture this. It is the mid-1980s. Tens of millions of Americans are tuning in every single week to watch the same woman. She is radiant, she is funny, she is warm. She is the kind of woman that makes you feel, just by looking at her, that the world is fundamentally a good and decent place. Her name is Markie Post. And every one of those tens of millions of people who loved her, they thought they knew her. They did not. Because behind that luminous smile, behind those sparkling eyes, behind every laugh she pulled out of a studio audience, there was a woman quietly suffocating. A woman who had been handed a golden image she never asked for and could not escape. A woman who fought year after year to be taken seriously in an industry that had already decided who she was and what she was worth. A woman whose greatest personal battle, the most devastating chapter of her entire life, she faced almost completely alone, hidden from the world, while still showing up to work with a smile that could light up a room. Stay with us, because today we are going to tell you the truth about Markie Post. Not the character, not the safe version Hollywood sold to the world, the real woman, the real story. And if you think you already know it, you are about to discover just how much has been left untold. In today's video, we are going to show you rare and remarkable photos of Markie Post while sharing little-known facts about her life. From her complicated childhood to the career that made her a household name, to the private war she waged with a deadly illness, while the cameras kept rolling and the world never once suspected a thing. She was born Marjorie Armstrong Post on November 4th, 1950, in Walnut Creek, California. From the very beginning, she was something of a paradox, an ordinary girl born into an extraordinary household. Her father, Richard Post, was a brilliant and widely respected physicist who worked at the prestigious Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. His research spanned the breathtaking frontiers of nuclear fusion, plasma physics, and magnetic levitation. This was a man who spent his days thinking about the very forces that hold the universe together. And then there was her mother, Marilyn, a poet, sensitive and expressive, alive to the beauty of language in a way that her physicist husband could only admire from a respectful distance. Marjorie Armstrong Post grew up in a home full of intelligence, creativity, and, whether anyone intended it or not, a quiet but relentless pressure to be exceptional. She went by Markie, not by any glamorous design, not as a stage name or a brand. Her siblings, as young children, simply could not properly pronounce her full given name. The name got scrambled, softened, simplified, and so Markie it became, and Markie it stayed. There is something poetic about that. The woman who would spend her entire career being reshaped by Hollywood got her very name changed before she was old enough to walk to school. She attended Los Altos High School, where she became a cheerleader, energetic, visible, enthusiastic. On the surface, she was the picture of the all-American girl. And underneath, Markie Post was seething with a quiet, private rebellion. You may not believe this, but it is true. As a teenager, Markie did everything in her power to be a rebel. The pressure from her parents bore down on her constantly, even if neither Richard nor Marilyn consciously intended it. She felt like she came up short. In an interview she gave years later, Markie admitted she wasn't as brilliant as her father and didn't possess her mother's natural charm. "So," she said with the wry smile that would one day make millions of people love her, "I decided to be bad." Then she added, "I couldn't do it. I wouldn't drink, couldn't smoke, and didn't have sex. I flunked at being a rebel." That line tells you everything you need to know about Markie Post. Even her rebellions were wholesome. Even her darkness had a light in it. The girl simply could not help being decent. It was in her bones. But that decency was about to cause her real pain. When she arrived at college as a freshman, Markie was voted the biggest snob on campus. Let that sink in. Not the most talented, not the most beautiful, the biggest snob. She was devastated. She cried for days on end. The world saw arrogance where there was only anxiety. Coldness where there was really just shyness. A snob where there was really just a girl terrified of not being enough. It nearly broke her. She had enrolled intending to follow in her father's footsteps, physics, hard science. But the math was not on her side, and eventually she dropped out. the dream quietly died. And in its place, in the space that opened when she let go of who she was supposed to be, something unexpected began to grow. She turned to acting. She earned a Bachelor of Arts. And it was there, in the world of characters and performance and imagination, that Markie Post finally began to feel, for the first time, like herself. It was also there that she fell in love. His name was Stephen Knox. He was a fellow drama student, and by Markie's own description, he was everything she was not: charismatic, cynical, sharp-edged, magnetic. They say opposites attract, and in this case, they were not wrong. Before Stephen, Markie had never had a romantic experience of any kind. She later described their dynamic with a line so perfectly Markie Post, it sounds like something Christine Sullivan would have said. "I was Snow White and he was James Dean." There is an entire world in that one sentence: tenderness, humor, and nostalgia for the person she was before Hollywood decided what she should be. The two got married in 1971. Markie was just 21 years old. The marriage, full of passion and intensity, burned bright, and then it burned out. Less than a year after the wedding, it was over. Markie Post was now a divorced woman at 22, starting from scratch in a city that ate people alive. But Markie Post had never been the kind of woman who stayed down for long. After college, Markie made her way into the entertainment industry through the back door. She started working behind the scenes on game shows: The Price is Right, Family Feud, Split Second, learning the industry from the inside, understanding how it worked. She rose quickly. By 1978, she was working as associate producer on Double Dare, the game show hosted by the legendary Alex Trebek. She was rubbing shoulders with television royalty, developing relationships and skills that would serve her for decades. But something was shifting inside her. Eventually, Markie found herself not behind the cameras, but in front of them. She was on the set of Card Sharks, dealing cards and standing in the lights. And the moment she stepped out from behind the curtain and into the spotlight, she realized something that would change the entire direction of her life. She loved it. She loved being in front of the cameras. She loved the performance of it, the way a room full of people could respond to something she said or did. She had been behind the machine, and now she wanted to be what the machine was pointed at. There was no going back from that. Her first film role came in Frankie and Annette, the second time around. Between 1979 and 1981, she threw herself into television with relentless energy. Guest appearances piled up: Chips, Barnaby Jones, The Incredible Hulk, Heart to Heart, House Calls, Eight is Enough, The Greatest American Hero, McLean's Law. Show after show, she was building something brick by brick. In 1981, it appeared her big break had arrived. She landed a substantial role in Semi-Tough, a new series with a young David Hasselhoff, built on the bones of the beloved Burt Reynolds film. The industry was watching. On paper, the show had everything. It aired 4 episodes, and then it was gone. Markie Post picked herself up. She always did. Because something far bigger was waiting just around the corner. 2 things, actually. One would bring her the career. The other would bring her the love of her life. In 1980, Markie enrolled in an acting class, and there she met a man named Michael A. Ross, a writer and producer. Funny, quick, ambitious, Markie Post thought he was a complete and total phony. She did not like him at all. And then, slowly, in the way that only real love works, something changed. The irritation became fascination. The phony turned out to be the real thing. Michael A. Ross was her soulmate. They were married in 1982. And unlike her first marriage, beautiful but brief, this one was built to last. Michael and Markie remained, by all accounts, deeply and madly in love for the rest of her life. He was her person, fully and completely. In 1987, they welcomed their first daughter, Kate Armstrong Ross. In 1990, their second daughter, Daisy, arrived. The family was complete. The private life was rich and real. But 1982 didn't just bring Markie a husband, it brought her a career that would define the next decade. In 1982, Markie Post joined the cast of The Fall Guy in its second season. She played Terry Shannon, a bail bondswoman, opposite Lee Majors as Colt Seavers, already a massive household name. It was a hit show, national television. By any objective measure, the break Markie Post had been working toward, and she was miserable. Her character existed in the margins. She had lines and scenes, but she felt, in her own words, like a typewriter more than an actor. Something functional but interchangeable, something with no soul of its own. She felt invisible. It was the atmosphere on set, the inner circle she was never invited into, the conversations that stopped when she walked into a room, the persistent corrosive sense that no one particularly cared whether she was there or not. Years later, it came to light that co-star Heather Thomas, the leading lady opposite Lee Majors, was at that time battling a severe addiction so serious that her family had staged an intervention. The situation was genuinely frightening, and those closest to her were dealing with it in real time. Markie had no idea. Not a single whisper. Not a hint. In 3 years on that show, 3 years of showing up, doing her job, trying to belong, no one ever let her in. She was so far outside the circle of trust that the private crisis of a colleague went completely unnoticed. "I felt like nothing," she said later. "I felt like a zero." She was never nothing, but the industry had a way of making women feel that way. While the fall guy was grinding her down, she was building her profile everywhere else. Code Red, Matt Houston, The Love Boat, Cheers, Fantasy Island, Glitter, The A-Team. Show by show, her face was becoming familiar to American audiences. And then came 1984, and everything changed. In 1984, Markie Post joined Night Court in a leading recurring role. She played Christine Sullivan, a public defender working the late-night shift in a Manhattan courtroom run by the eccentric and endearing Judge Harry T. Stone. Almost overnight, Markie Post became a star. Night Court was not just a successful show, it was a cultural institution. At its peak, it drew tens of millions of viewers per week. The humor was sharp, warm, and inclusive, and at the center of it all, warm, funny, beautiful, radiant, was Christine Sullivan. Christine was caught in a love triangle that drove audiences wild. On one side was Dan Fielding, the slick assistant DA played with total commitment by John Larroquette, pursuing Christine constantly and shamelessly. On the other side was Judge Harry Stone himself, played to perfection by Harry Anderson, kind, sincere, a little eccentric. Fans had no doubt where Christine belonged. She belonged with Harry. Anyone could see it. Even Markie herself confirmed it years later. Christine and Harry were the perfect match, but they never officially got together on the show. The will they won't they played out across years of television without ever fully resolving. It became one of the great unsatisfied longings of 1980s television. And then, years later, on 30 Rock, it almost happened. In a now legendary episode, the character Kenneth Parcell, played by Jack McBrayer, turns out to be one of those fans who never got over Harry and Christine. To cheer him up, Tracy Jordan, played by Tracy Morgan, invites Markie Post and Harry Anderson to come to 30 Rock as themselves and reprise their roles so their characters can finally, officially, get married. The 30 Rock crew builds an entire faithful recreation of the original Night Court courtroom. And then Harry and Markie get into a massive fight during rehearsals. The wedding is called off. The characters never make it down the aisle. The fans are denied once again. It is one of the most perfectly executed jokes in television history. Most fans also have no idea that Markie's husband, Michael Ross, appeared in an episode of Night Court. He played a rock and roll singer with a drug habit, about as far from Michael's real personality as possible. His wife's co-stars decided it would be hilarious to spend the day trying to throw him off his game. They goofed around during rehearsals, messing with his concentration. And Markie? Markie was more nervous than Michael, so much so that it was Markie who had to be taken aside and calmed down. She got herself together, found her sense of humor, and watched Michael nail every single scene. Of course he did. He was her soulmate after all. Here is the paradox that sat at the heart of Markie Post's life during the Night Court years, and one she never entirely made peace with. In real life, Markie Post was, by any conventional standard, an extraordinarily beautiful woman. Warm, natural, accessible. Young men had her swimsuit posters on their bedroom walls. Magazines called her a sex symbol without hesitation. As the saying goes, girls wanted to be her and men wanted to be with her. And Christine Sullivan wore unflattering suits and had a quirky, occasionally dim-witted quality. Her sexuality was carefully, deliberately hidden. The gap between who Markie Post was in life and who she was allowed to be on screen was enormous. The deeper paradox was this: even when the world was calling her a sex symbol, even when the posters were selling, Markie Post genuinely did not see herself that way. In one interview, she replied with complete sincerity, "I'm no sexual siren. I see prettier girls than me in the grocery store every day." She meant it. She truly, completely meant it. And that combination, the real-world beauty she couldn't see in herself, the on-screen image that hid it anyway, created a situation that over time became increasingly difficult to bear. Because while audiences adored Christine Sullivan, Markie Post was suffocating inside her. She was typecast, and the strangest thing about this particular typecast was that it wasn't based on her roles or previous performances. It was based on who she actually was as a human being. Markie Post in real life was sweet. She was good. She followed the rules. She was, as she once put it herself, always the voice of reason. She was a wonderful, caring mother and a devoted wife, a woman of genuine warmth and decency. And Hollywood looked at that woman and said, "Great, play the mom, play the nice one, play the good girl." That was the offer, year after year. And Markie Post was done with that offer. She wanted to play a real human being, flawed and complicated and three-dimensional. She wanted to light up a scene not because her character was charming and sweet, but because her character was fierce and fully alive. She fought for it, quietly, persistently, with steady and dignified determination. And eventually, the fight paid off. In 1992, Markie Post landed the role that finally gave her what she had been asking for. The show was Hearts Afire, a political satire, smart and sharp and unapologetically opinionated. And the character Markie was cast to play was named Georgie Ann Lottie. Georgie Ann was nothing like Christine Sullivan, nothing at all. She was a journalist, chain-smoking and world-weary and fiercely independent. She held strong views and expressed them without apology. She traveled the world alone. She was the complete and total opposite of everything Hollywood had spent the last decade insisting Markie Post was. And Markie Post loved her with everything she had. "The best thing I'd ever done," she said of the show, more than once with a conviction impossible to miss. Opposite her was the extraordinary John Ritter, playing John Hartman, a senator's aide. The characters clashed constantly, politically, personally, and then slowly, inevitably, fell in love. The chemistry between them crackled with the kind of energy you can't manufacture. Billy Bob Thornton appeared in the cast. The great Ed Asner brought his enormous presence to the show. Critics who had spent years watching Markie be carefully defanged by her material finally sat up and paid attention. One wrote that she had finally discovered herself as an actress. She had. She truly had. And then the network pulled the rug out. In the second season, Hearts Afire underwent sweeping changes. The sharp satire was softened. The political teeth were pulled. The fierce, flawed, fully human character Markie had finally been allowed to inhabit was slowly, systematically domesticated. The show was toned down and made safer, made with a painful irony, more like everything Markie Post had been trying to escape. The role she had fought for was quietly taken apart, and Markie Post simply kept going. She kept going. That is perhaps the most essential thing to understand about Markie Post. She did not collapse under disappointment. She did not retreat into bitterness. Year after year, she showed up and did the work. She appeared in Something About Mary, one of the defining comedies of the late 1990s, still referenced decades later. For 18 episodes, she appeared on Chicago PD as Barbara Bunny Fletcher, gritty and dramatic, worlds away from Night Court, exactly the kind of territory she had always wanted more of. She was excellent. Lifetime Christmas films brought her warm presence to holiday audiences. 4 Christmases and a Wedding. The Kids Are All Right. 4 episodes as Helen Plolart. Christmas Reservations as Tay Griffin. She kept working, kept showing up, kept bringing her gift to everything she touched. And all the while, she was hiding something. Something enormous, something that was quietly, slowly taking her apart from the inside. Nobody knew. That is the most astonishing part of this chapter of Markie Post's story. In an industry that thrives on gossip and tears at the private lives of public figures as a form of entertainment, nobody knew. Markie Post had been diagnosed with cancer. She kept it quiet, contained, hidden, with extraordinary discipline and courage within the small circle of people she trusted most. The world went on watching her on screen, thinking everything was fine. And Markie Post went on working, going to her appointments, sitting through chemotherapy, enduring the treatments, and then getting herself together and showing up on set and doing her job. She once said she wanted to keep acting as a side job during her illness. A side job. Think about what that means. Think about what it takes to endure the physical devastation of cancer treatment and then step in front of a camera and make people feel something real. Think about the will that requires. The sheer, stubborn, magnificent human will. That drive, that insistence on continuing to work, continuing to show up, said more about who Markie Post really was than any role she ever played. It was not performance, it was character, the deepest kind of courage. She appeared in 4 Christmases and A Wedding for Lifetime. She appeared in 4 episodes of The Kids Are All Right. She played Tay Griffin in Christmas Reservations. She kept giving. And her very last screen credit, the final entry in a career spanning more than 4 decades, was 1 episode of the Netflix series Soundtrack, in which she played a character identified simply as Johanna's mom. Just a mom. After everything she had done, after every fight she had fought to be more than the sweet one, the pure one, the good girl next door. After Hearts Afire and Chicago PD and every battle waged to be seen as a full and complete human being rather than a symbol, her last role was a mother. You can read that as irony, or you can read it as the truth coming full circle. Because the people who knew Markie Post best did not remember her as Christine Sullivan or Georgie Ann Lottie or Bunny Fletcher. They remembered her as a mother. 3 years and 10 months after her diagnosis, Markie Post lost her fight with cancer. She passed away on August 7, 2021. She was 70 years old. The outpouring of grief was immediate and enormous and completely genuine. Colleagues who had worked with her decades earlier posted tributes. Fans who had grown up watching Night Court, who had taped episodes on VHS and worn those tapes smooth with rewatching, shared their heartbreak. The internet, that vast and often cold place, was briefly and genuinely warm. But the tributes that cut closest to the bone came not from Hollywood. They came from home. Her family remembered her not as the actress or the star or the woman on the poster. They remembered her as a wife, as a mother, as a woman who baked extraordinary cakes for her friends, magical ones, the kind that seemed to carry real love in their ingredients. They remembered her as someone who adored crafts and sewing and the quiet work of making beautiful things with her hands. They remembered her as a woman who showed the people around her, by example every single day, how to be kind and loving and forgiving in a world that seemed to actively discourage all 3. Michael, the husband she had once dismissed as a phony and who turned out to be her soulmate, was by her side. Kate and Daisy, her daughters, were there. The family was whole, even in its grief. Here is what the industry never fully understood about Markie Post, and what the people who loved her understood from the very beginning. She was not Christine Sullivan. She was not the sweet girl next door. She was not the typecast good woman. She was not the swimsuit poster or the sex symbol or the crowd-pleasing performer. She was not the image Hollywood built and sold and then tried to keep small because small was easier to manage. She was a woman who grew up in the shadow of extraordinary parents and spent her whole life quietly, stubbornly, insisting on becoming herself instead of them. A woman who failed at being a rebel and refused to feel bad about it. A woman who got called a snob for being shy and cried for days and then got back up. A woman who married badly once, fell apart, and found her person in the last place she expected, in an acting class, in the form of a man she initially found insufferable. She was a woman who spent years feeling invisible on television sets where no one thought to include her. A woman who fought with grace and persistence to be taken seriously in an industry that preferred her decorative. A woman who finally, in her 40s, played the fierce and complicated woman she had always known she could be. and was brilliant, and then watched the show get toned down and made safe again. She was a woman who got sick, quietly and alone, and kept showing up anyway. And she was a woman who, in the end, was remembered not for posters or credits or ratings, but for the cakes she baked and the love she gave and the way she showed people what it looks like to choose kindness. There is a version of Markie Post's story that focuses on the injustice of it all, the years of being underestimated, the industry that kept her inside a box labeled good girl. And that version is not wrong. Those things happened and that frustration was real. But there is another version, the truer one. It is the version where Markie Post, despite the setbacks and the dismissals and the typecast and the illness and the quiet heartbreak of knowing what you were capable of and not always being allowed to show it, lived a genuinely full life. A life with real love in it, real work in it, real joy in it. A life that mattered in ways that had nothing to do with ratings or reviews or posters on a bedroom wall. She was Snow White, yes, but she was also a woman who understood exactly what kind of world she lived in and who chose kindness anyway, who chose grace anyway, who chose to show up right until the very end and do the work. That is the truth about Markie Post, not the poster, the person. And the person was extraordinary. If you enjoyed this video, there is a good chance you will love the one coming up on your screen right now. Click to watch and do not forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this one. We will see you in the next one.